All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation continues even during the break. Let's bring up some of your feedback and see what you're saying here. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's see some of your concerns as we talk about the president's speech and the in-tray for the 13th Parliament. His inaugural speech was yesterday. Fantas Mutiga says the president's speech was very categorical and gave the country a lot of hope in terms of improving the living standards of the common man and growth of the economy. Bravo, Mr. President. All right. See what else you're saying here. Hussein Ismail says Ledama is a great and smart guy. The only problem is he's in the wrong coalition. He should join the Hustler Nation where the voices of young people are heard and valued. SP Deputy Speakers welcomed him there. Kinywa Mushoki says a big percentage of our elected leaders have active court cases. The president had to wear a blindfold to Chapter 6 when picking cabinet nominees. Members of the committee on appointment will probably wear the same blindfold. And we'll talk about that.
Very factual.
Yeah. Stemuni says, I love most of what the president outlined, but I have serious issues with him supporting CDF and suggesting a similar kitty for the Senate. That is a mistake. Okay.
That's good.
All right. Boss, I'll come back to you again. The president is proposing a cut of 300 billion spending cuts order. And you mentioned that you hang out with economists. Where is this money going to come from? And was it budgeted for, was it like an excess budget, so to speak? Because if you can cut it out, it means you didn't need it in the first place. And out of a deficit of 900 billion, why 300 and not 600?
You know, Trevor, even in your home state, if you had a shortage of money, you look at the things that are not mission critical, things that are not absolutely necessary. We just need to look at how much you spend on flowers to decorate public offices. You remove that first. You look at how much tea and mandazis and food that we bring every time there's a meeting. People can eat in their homes, carry their own lunch like I do, and go and eat in your house. No, you can do that because it's something that's given to senior public servants.
Austerity measures, basically.
Austerity measures. So we have to tighten the belt. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. We have to tighten the belt. We've got to do something. And it's going to be painful, but in the long run, it will work better for the country. So yes, it's very. By then you can pick out each of those issues. There are a lot of things that were also wasting resources.
Yeah.
I think also you tell yourself the issue is not spending the money. You ask yourself, when you spend it, what do you get back? That's why he talked about we spend only 10% of our GDP goes to investment. The rest, 25%, we spend on. I mean, he says we should spend up to 25% on investment in order to bear results. So when you talk about slashing, it's slashing in places where it's not an investment. Mm-hmm. And I think just as I say this, it's quick to make some corrections. The National Government Constituency Development Fund, NGCDF, was actually enacted by Parliament after the courts gave them 12 months to cure the irregularity and the unconstitutionality that existed in the CDF of 2013. So actually that issue is mute at the moment. And actually Parliament did implement it and completed it. The case that was before the Supreme Court was about the CDF of 2013, which has since been cured.
Yeah. So the 2015 NGCDF has no issues.
Yes, yes. I think when member for Bumula was mentioning, and you said the fertilizer subsidy, you know, the fuel is still expensive. I think we should ask ourselves, let's be honest. I'm a farmer. If I can buy fertilizer for 3,500, at least it's even cut the cost that would have gone to fuel. So at the end of the day, it's a start. Mm-hmm. I know the reason why many farmers don't access these subsidies. They are not registered farmers. So I know that one of the big challenges is how to ensure that these farmers are registered. Some people inherited property. Others are widows who have the property. Yeah. Others are our children who are actually farming on our shambas, but they can't register because they do not own the title. So we've got to recognize that challenge. There are people who haven't held titles for their properties for 30 years, but they've been living there because it's family land. So those are some of the issues that we need to change to allow them more access. It is something that has to be a work in progress. If I'm to talk about, in fact, I want to invite Senator Dedama, you can come with me actually. Let's go and look at the Pangani affordable housing that was started in the last, with the previous government. It started, except that when BBI came in, things slowed down and it was stopped. But it's actually real, and houses have been built. Kenyans will be able to have a mortgage, they're paying 2,000 shillings. So these houses exist, these apartments exist. Go to Pangani, there is another one, I'll give it to you now, and you can go to the website called Bomayangu. Go to Bomayangu, and you'll be able to see it. So I think what happened is, unfortunately, the president's speech was brief, so he didn't say all those things. But again, I will definitely send you a copy of the plan, because then you will see the details of the plan. But I like what the president said. He said that he wants his ministers to be accountable to Parliament. Now, what you'll be able to do, when they bring that housing plan, you can take them on and then be able to participate in making it better. And that is, I think, the mood all of us should be having now, because elections is over. This government is this government for the next 5 years. All we can do is make life better for all Kenyans. So yes, look at that plan. I think on the issue of ministers coming to answer in Parliament, what is happening at the moment, they already do that. But they meet in committees. And sometimes they can manage to lobby the committee to be nice to them. I think the issue of putting them on the floor of the House is to give it a higher standard of accountability, to be able to be scrutinized by not just the 30 members or 20 members of a committee, where you can have control, isn't it? If you talk to you can make 20 phone calls and tell them, lay off on me. But if they come to the floor of the House, then the accountability is higher. We can put more pressure. In fact, I think it's a very brave thing for the president to do. And I welcome it, because they already appear in Parliament. It's just that it's not in the chamber. You know, the committee is not in the, it's still Parliament. It's a hearing of Parliament. It's legitimately Parliament business. Except that it is in a smaller room with a select group of people. And after a while, a minister can actually have a very, they have a personal relationship with the members, and then nothing goes on. So I think it's something that anybody who wants accountability apt should be trying to support it. And then I think, again, a member here for Bumula, I will also give you a copy of the plan, because you will realize that the Mumias is mentioned heavily, Muhoroni, by specific actual details. That's what I'm saying. The problem is we were in campaign mode. We had not read the government plan. But when the ministers come, they will also be taken to task in Parliament. What is your plan? How will you execute it? Is it bound to fail or not? Then we can make sure that we improve it. When you talk about the Hustler Fund, people think the Hustler Fund will go to some people. It will be spread out the 290 constituencies. So there is no constituency in Kenya that will not have that access to that fund. It will be more or less akin, almost like the way CDF works. So that it's uniform for everybody. And that's why I always say, in the first 2 years of government, I think it's always good to give them the goodwill to try and perform. But also support them by criticizing. Because if you want a government to work, let's criticize them. You will notice that I will now criticize the ministers that are from the Kenya Kwanza team, because now it's different. Now I have a job to do as a parliamentarian and to undertake oversight.
Ledama, how would you rather the accountability be done?
Can I just pick up from where my sister has left? I think we have to be very cautious and to be alive to the principle of separation of powers, for our check and balance system. One thing I like what she said is that we have to criticize. In fact, I'll add, we have to scrutinize every executive policy. You see, during the campaigns, we were two opposing sides. You know, we were competitors. Now, the Constitution, mandates us to oversight the executive. Not we are not going to be divided, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. For us, as parliament, our job is to be able to scrutinize, and call the executive to account. Yes. Now, here's the thing. My problem is this, is that when the president talks about introducing cabinet secretaries on the floor of the House, what, in my view, the president is attempting to do is to reintroduce proposal from the BBI, which he opposed. Correct. And for me, if that's the route, why don't we then republish the BBI? Let's remove the contentious issues. Let's go through the citizens of Kenya. And remember, these citizens of Kenya are the ones who passed Article 153 of the Constitution, which mandates every cabinet secretary. It's actually say a cabinet secretary shall attend either when it's called by a committee of the House, either National Assembly or the Senate. So really, let's live by what we subscribe to, the Constitution. That is issue number one. Number two, I don't have a problem with the plan. Can we now lay out the execution plan? Can we say, okay, for me, this is what I'm looking at. If you started by asking the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly the question about the budget, I've always been on the front line saying form follows functions. Money should follow what? The functions. Health is devolved, but 90% of the budget of the Ministry of Health is left in the national government. So if the president can come and say, okay, I don't see the reason why we should have billions of shillings. If you look at the health budget, is equivalent to about 5 or 6 counties allocation of a county the size of Murang'a. So if you ask yourself, can we then now say, let's increase more money to counties so that whatever functions have been devolved, they can actually be carried out? Agriculture is devolved. If you're saying you want to reduce 300 billion, let us be practical. Let's come and say, okay, how much do we have in the health budget? And let's put it out in the open for every Kenyan to be able to see. The problem is that a lot of this is hidden in secrecy. People are saying, oh, we're going to do this thing. If you're talking about affordable housing, there's absolutely no reason as to why every young Kenyan who is graduating from high school now cannot be able to apply and qualify for that house. It can cost 1 million shillings. I've built a house for my farm worker for 1 million shillings. And if you work with developing partners like the World Bank, who can be able to give you loans or grants, you can actually give that loan to a young Kenyan who is working, the one that you're calling a hustler, who is working, and you can say you will pay 4,600 shillings a month for 20 years. I lived in America for 20 years, and when I was in America, I had a mortgage in my house, and my mortgage was for 30 years. I could be able to afford a life. So I really think what we need to do now is to be practical, to say, if we are cutting the budget, let us demystify. Tell Kenyans, we're reducing here, we're sending more money to the county governments. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about this, the issue of savings, which I'd wanted to mention. Back in 2019, I actually came up with a proposal, and I was going to send a proposal as a form of legislation on how Kenyans should save 40% of their income. I was bashed. And in fact, my thinking was, if you look at, for instance, Deputy Speaker Shole here, if she's an attorney working as an expatriate in another country, she's paid more. So I said, Kenyans, we have got to rationalize that. Kenyans pay Kenyans more. Those who can afford, to be paid more, don't pay expatriates more than you can pay a Kenyan, because the Kenyans are equally qualified. Then request, or rather come up with a system that they can save about 40% of their wealth, which they're paid more. But those ones who are not paid a lot more, then the government should be able to support them so that they can also be able to have a form of living. Yeah. I like the fact that, and I subscribe to the same thoughts, where when you save enough money, then we can now borrow. The problem is that credit is expensive in Kenya now because the government borrows from local banks. It is not borrowing from outside. So the banks are more secure lending to the government than lending to individuals. So I think the proposal that the president might have, they look very good on paper. What I want to hear is not that we are going to now come in and bring in cabinet secretaries or to introduce BBI proposals into, his administration.
Yeah.
I want to see a good layout plan to say, as the executive, and we subscribe to the principle of separation of powers. As the executive, when I'm given this is my budget.
Yeah.
Parliament, I'm not dangling. I've seen headlines saying the president dangles a carrot on CDF and oversight. People need to know that it is Parliament that gives the president money. The president doesn't have money to give us. It is us, Parliament. The moment we realize that we are the ones who control the purse is the moment we will be able to come up with a plan that can be executed. Okay. Not a plan that will be utopian or something which will just be good on paper. It's a plan that can actually be executed.
All right.
Could I ask Honorable Wamboka just to give me 1 minute of your time, kindly?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, just to say something. Yes, I've just listened to I've just listened to Senator Ledama, and actually you're executing the plan. Exactly. When you talk about investors who are going to have guaranteed offtake on any completed units by government, it is in the plan. Exactly what you're saying.
No.
Bring it, yes.
I said it differently. My problem is this, my dear sister. Listen, let me tell you.
Let me just finish responding to you. So that idea you're talking about investors and so on, it is actually there in the plan. That's what I'm saying. It's just that we don't have sufficient time to explain it. So we are on the same page on that one. When you're saying that you're worried about the MPs coming in, we're not introducing BBI. We are not making the members of parliament. We are saying they can be summoned to appear, not by changing the constitution, but by changing only the standing orders, so that they are allowed to be summoned the way the standing order allows us to have the president in parliament yesterday. So it is just amending the standing orders to do that. They are not becoming members of parliament as suggested by BBI. When you've talked about the housing and you say you want Kenyans to be able to take a 30-year mortgage. Actually, that is what is in the plan. It is saying Kenyans will pay as little as 2,000 shillings.
That's not possible.
Yeah, just as little as 2,000 shillings to be able to have a one-roomed house or one-bedroomed house. They would pay for the same price in Kibra for a house made out of mud, with no sanitation and with no bathrooms. So actually, that's what I'm telling you, please, let's go visit that place. You understand the plan. And the money, if any investor puts up those housing units, those affordable housing units that are costing us less, in fact, it's 600,000.
All right. Next, Ledama, 30 seconds to
30 seconds. Because I think Article 153...
It's his chance. I think we should leave on
153, Article 153.3 is very clear.
Yeah.
It actually says the cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly. My concern is this.
Yeah.
Anyone walking on that floor of that house, unless it's a sergeant at arms, unless it's a clerk, or a member elected to be able to go and debate issues, is a stranger. Is a stranger. So really, we do not want to see cabinet secretaries on the floor. If you want them to be on the floor, let us change our system of governance. That is my point.
Though the former speaker said that it's just amending Article 2, Standing Order 250.
No,
but that's for you guys to decide.
It is not. Let me allow my...
Thank you, my brother. First, Madam Speaker, we are legislators. You are here as a legislator and actually to put the executive on the check. So you are too much defending a government, which goes against our commandate. Two,
we are commenting on the speech.
Two,
QR.
Before I come to the 300 billion, I think it is not possible in law to have ministers come to the floor of the House. You remember we wanted to change law, BBI. They refused. And what they are doing now is they are going through the back door to bring these things. One is what she's trying to talk about. Two, where in the Constitution is a cabinet position called prime cabinet minister. Okay, they're just trying to reintroduce BBI through the back door. But if you want these things done, some of them are very good. Let's go back to the law and change the law. Now, my next point, why 300 billion? Why not 1 trillion? Why not 100 billion? As I said, we want to see a clear roadmap on where the president got this figure of 300. My only concern, my brother, is to maybe urge the president to complete, very urgently complete all the projects that were started by the other regime where he was a deputy president. There are so many unfinished projects down there, starting from roads, I mean, all. So I would be thinking the president should be telling us, I need to reappropriate these funds from this vote to this vote to complete some of these projects to spur economic growth. Madam Speaker, when you say you want to subsidize fertilizer, why register people? Why register? Because if someone comes and buys fertilizer, they are not going to use it elsewhere. They are not going to put it into their cars and use as fuel. They are going to use it for agricultural purposes. So why do you want to tell a farmer to register?
Can sell it.
Yeah, farmers are farmers, and if you subsidize, please ensure that these things goes down to our people. My next question about this fertilizer story, what is the sustainability? What is the sustainability? I'm also a farmer. It is not true to say if you subsidize fertilizer, then fuel becomes less expensive. No. Remember, we were told handshake is the cost of fuel, the price is going up. We were told, handshake is the cause of high cost of living. So where we are, we want, please do something about fuel. Fuel, by subsidizing fertilizer, is not a cure to fuel or to prices of food. Okay? You said Mumias is in manifesto. What you're calling the plan. By the way, your plan is very ambitious. So I really want to go with what the president...
Ambition is a good thing.
...addresses himself to. He talked about coffee. He talked about tea. Let the president talk about sugar farming.
Okay.
One last thing that I expected the president to talk about. Devolution is the most transformative agenda born out of the new 2010 Constitution. Out of all his 22 ministers, there's no mention on devolution. Out of 49 departments, there's no mention on devolution. Mm-hmm. Devolution ministry has been a midwife. By the way, there are still some teething problems around this devolution being the elephant in the house. Who is going to now midwife that process?
Okay.
Who is going to steer it to the next level?
Okay.
Who's going to address issues from the county government? Yeah. From county government. Who's going to coordinate?
Okay.
Talk about it. Yeah. So for me, in all fairness,
yeah.
I think we need to understand where does devolution sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wangari?
Thanks, Trevor. And I think I'll just speak from what Honorable Mboka has spoken about. In fact, for me, we should celebrate that there is no devolution ministry. Yeah. Because 15 years after the enactment of the Constitution, why do you need to run a whole ministry to run counties? Yeah. We have a council of governors, even now. We have the third generation governors in office. In fact, recently, there was the induction of governors and deputy governors in Mombasa, and I was one of the panelists. And the question is, what are we doing? We had transitional authority that was actually supposed to midwife. Now we have intergovernmental relations, something that is supposed to midwife. We've had a whole ministry run with a whole budget to midwife the same job that should be done by the Senate as the oversight and the eyes for the counties. So why are we duplicating this? In fact, this is one of the austerity measures we should be talking about, abolishing that ministry. We don't need it. Let now the Council of Governors get out there at the IBEC, negotiate all the functions that are supposed to be devolved, by the way, some of which are in the plan also. It will be a co-shared thing, because if you talk housing, if you talk physical planning, if you talk agriculture, if you talk health, all these issues touch on the counties. So what is the role now of the Council of Governors? It is for them to work hand in hand, and not only by the Senate. In fact, the weak and the missing link in this devolution agenda is the National Assembly. Because before you go for the county allocation, it is appropriated from the National Assembly. Let the National Assembly also get to know that devolution affects us. By the way, it is an agenda for the country. It is how it is. And I think if we all played our role, then devolution would work. We don't need the whole ministry run by the coffers of, from Treasury to actually midwife a project 15 years ago, 15 years after. So I think this abolishment of this ministry is the one step that has shown commitment that devolution should be at the center of this administration. The issue of registration of farmers, and I think all of us represent areas where we partake or are shareholders or what we call stakeholders of farming. Yeah. But we know what happens. If there is no order of this registration, you'll get a broker buying this fertilizer for 3,500, selling it for 5,000. Yeah. It's still cheaper, yes, but you don't even have a piece of land you can call your own. Yeah. So what does that do? It creates and opens another total corruption agenda in the counties. So let NCPB register farmers, and that is done by agricultural officers, also by the county. They are all shared functions. Let us have a list. We know you have a quarter an acre, you have 2 acres, someone has 6 acres. Let us know by name who it is. Even what Honorable Shole was talking about, we will know you're the mother title, you have children who farm, yes, but it will be done through the ownership of that land. We know the size and we know how much you'll need for fertilizer, because when you get to be open like that, it will just open corruption cartels. Okay. The other issue I would want to talk about is the issue of NGCDF. And I think the president could be said, like Honorable Edama says, like dangled it. But at the end of the day, by the way, this NGCDF is not punishing MPs. It must be known, it is not punishing members of parliament. Right now, I'm telling you, if I go to my constituency, which I will go after this show, is you don't know what to tell people. Kids are at home. There are people we support, children I support through bursaries. They are not in school today. They have been sent home to get this money. Where do they get the money from? And there is no alternative that is being provided. So I think the unlocking of this limbo must be a bigger agenda, and it has to be done through the law. And this issue of that we cannot touch, by the way, even the Constitution, Parliament has the power to open it up. The only thing is Article 10 of the Constitution, public participation. It must go to the people, because the sovereignty power we enjoy is donated. It is given by the people under Article 1 of the Constitution. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you can call it BBI, call it what you want, open the standing orders, but at the end of the day, what the president is speaking about, curing. We have been in this parliament now 15, this is my 3rd term. We are not able to get comprehensive answers. We are not able to hold ministers accountable to the people. And we represent the people by Article 95, 96, and 98. You know, we represent the people. So if we cannot ask these questions, and by the way, even the committee of the whole is a committee of the House. So to get the CSS to appear will not be unconstitutional. But if anything else can be cured by the law, because we are the lawmakers. And the role of parliament, I agree with Senator Ledama that at this point, it's not Kenya Kwanza, it is not Azimio. The hunger pangs we have in my constituency, the drought issues we have are the same in the Western region, are the same in Narok. There is no hungry Kenyan who is Azimio or Kenya Kwanza. If we have to deal with these issues, Parliament must work as one unit. And by the way, we are not told not to ask questions. Yeah. Even last Parliament, we came in through Jubilee, but we opposed some legislative agenda, even from the government, because it is not right with the people. So we will be free to exercise that free will of saying this agenda from the executive is not going to work for my people. Okay. That is not a voice that can be taken away.
All right, we have about 30 minutes to go, but I want to bring in Boss on this.